is James Mathers for the Digital Cinema Society at Cine Gear 2019. I'm here with my old friend. Oh, I don't mean to call you old, but
It's true.
Tim Smith. I've known for many many years. He was in our first documentary that we did like 17 years
I
ago,
remember that.
Digital Cinema Solutions. At that time, you were just introducing the XL1, I think, a mini
Yeah.
DV camera that and Canon had all this heritage of making still cameras, but that was your first foray into video, as far as I know.
It was sort of the step between the consumer video cameras and making something that was prosumer, which was a word for a while. And we kind of coined this prosumer thing. And then the camera kind of found its own world in legitimate film.
People made feature films with it. Steven
Soderbergh.
Soderbergh.
I was
yeah.
on that one. Yeah, that was really interesting for him to reach to a camera like that. And that there's probably people watching that weren't even born yet. But that camera was an interchangeable lens, 3rd-inch sensor, 3-chip camera. So it had a very video-y look to it, but it was more designed like a professional camera. You could set your own apertures, your own f-stops. You could focus it yourself. It was a great teaching tool. But and it was reasonably priced, so that was part of it. You know, there was a huge demand, though. There were people making all sorts of third-party rigs to make that sensor bigger. You know, there was spinning glass reels we would put in the front of it, and anything to kind of give it more
To reduce the depth of field.
To reduce the depth of field, try to give it that production value. And it was also interchangeable lens, which is big for us because lenses are where we shine and where the money is. So that camera evolved from standard def to high def. When we did that film with Soderbergh, it was called Full Frontal. We actually brought in the European version because it had 80 more lines of resolution, just to get that much more resolution.
But it was too clean for him. He messed up the video.
Yeah, it was. But it didn't really play into the storyline,
Yeah.
and the video just looked too pristine to sell what the storyline was. So yeah, he made it look more like an episode of Cops, and but it played at Cannes, and it was sort of a big deal.
And somewhere in there, they started figuring out that they could shoot video on DSLRs. Now that was a big game changer.
We backed into that one. That was the 5D Mark II, which was sort of the whole reason we're even here is 5D Mark IIs. That was the camera division, which again wasn't the division I was involved in because I was on the video side, producing a camera that met the requirements of AP and Reuters because they were sending out still photographers to shoot stills like they always did, but online content became a thing. So they needed video for their web pages. People wanted to watch things instead of look at pictures, and the industry was shifting. So they created this video function on it, literally video function, and on this big sensor, and it just had this really great look to it. And that was a craze or a fad. I mean, for years there was 5D films, and I think SLR filmmaking became a real word, all
Much
based
to my
on
chagrin.
yeah, and I, it was fun for me, but there was so many workarounds, and it's still being done. There's still lots of work being done on SLRs. There's clearly they're everywhere on this lot. Probably every show has one on the truck for something.
And mirrorless now.
And mirrorless now, and we do have a mirrorless one. The mirrorless has some real advantages when it comes to lens choices, so it makes a lot of sense. And again, everything's sort of about lenses. So we evolved through that one to the C300, which we announced 7 years ago now, maybe.
Your first real cinema camera.
Yeah,
I
that
would
was
say.
the first real jump to say, look, we need to make a Super 35 sensor in a real video camera. Where up to then we'd made these 1/3 inch ones, which gave everything a video depth of field from miles look. So we produced the C300, which has evolved into the Mark II and evolved into the
Went to
C700.
4K with the Mark II.
Went to 4K with the Mark II, and then we decided to go big with the C700, make a camera that didn't need as much workaround for most situations. And it's all gone really well. But the beautiful side effect is we also jumped into the cinema lens business, where the 5Ds were relying on existing lenses, SLR lenses. Mm-hmm. Now we're in the cinema lens business, and we've made quite a few lenses in the last couple of years. But this year is a little different. It marks a real shift in the way we approach lenses. We've produced a line of Cinema Primes called Sumi-Ray lenses, which have a very unique look to them, characteristics to them. It has sort of personality to the lens, where typically from an engineering standpoint, we are looking to make the most pristine, perfect piece of glass. We worked tirelessly to get flares out of lenses. Now we're making lenses that are putting flares back in again. That DPs like you sort of want. Pristine isn't actually. I don't know. I think the art is sort of.
Give
in
me the
imperfection.
K35s.
K35 played into this a lot. I mean, that's also a lens that a lot of people watching weren't born
That
when
was
we
in the
stopped
80s,
making it.
right?
We stopped making that over 30 years ago, but we got an Academy Award for that lens. And these lenses were beautiful, full frame, but they had a lot of interesting stuff that went on. Little distortions and a little softness and little aberrations and things.
And for people that don't know what those are, they were PL mount, usually, cinema glass, back in the 80s that Canon developed.
And,
primes,
and we both wish we still owned a set of those. Yeah. Back in the 80s when you bought them, back in the late 70s when you bought them, you could buy a full set for about $70,000 or $80,000. Now used, beat up and scuffed, they're worth $250,000, $300,000. Wow. That demand for that sort of vintage glass over the last couple of years has grown exponentially, which is why we introduced these Sumire lenses, to put creativity and character back into the glass again. And they've been very well received. They haven't even shipped yet. They will ship in around August, but I expect a lot of people to be looking for this glass. And it's also reasonably priced glass.
Yeah, now I understand that a lot of it has to do with the aperture. Of course, always it does in photography, but this, you get that character, especially when you're wide open, but as soon as you come off wide open a little bit, it's pretty clean.
Right, so it's a whole series of glass from 14 to 135, and they're called sumires, which is the Japanese word for a flower. Technically, it's a violet, and the marketing concept behind it, which is pretty clever, is as a flower opens up, it gets more beautiful. So as these lenses, as you open them up, it changes the characters. Yes, I thought that was pretty clever. But when you get to like a 1.3 on some of these, the bokeh will shift from a round to more of a cat's eye or football looking. The skin tones start to soften out. The interesting things just start to happen. Now, as you roll back up again, between a 2.8 and 4 split, they'll sort of return to more traditional looks. It's kind of like two looks in one. The look is primarily, though, at wide open. And these days with full frame and with glass, it seems like everybody isn't giving their focus pullers even a fighting chance. Everything is at 1.3. It would be at 0.2 if there was such a thing with these full frame. But that's where they live best, is wide open. And they're PL, which is a big thing for us because we've been making a version of lenses primes in EF for years, but the demand for PL is clearly there. Lots of full frame sensors on the market in the last couple of years. Resolution,
including Canon,
including us. We did do our first, which was the C700 full frame. Really well received. It's a 5.9 sensor, beautiful look, and this glass works terrific on it. But I've also shot a demo film on the Red Monster sensor, so they'll cover all the way up to the 8K, and they're going to work great on the Aries. When it comes to glass and cameras, we're a little more agnostic. There's two different industries and there's two different choices. So if a cinematographer wants to shoot Canon lenses, that's fine. What body is up to them. Obviously, we love the idea of it being both of ours, but it's the right tool for the right job, and that's their choice. So,
what do you see in the future?
From us, I think we're in the same place as everybody else. Is where do we go with resolution? Do we go to 8? Do we go to higher? Is there a point? Will the demand be there? I personally would wish we would be looking at things like more latitude, less chasing resolution.
I'm with you on that
4 and
one.
8, yeah. I think most cinematographers are. And I want better bit depth in the color. So in processing, I think the biggest thing coming up for most people is metadata, especially when it comes to glass and how much information is being recorded. So what we're doing inside the camera. We've already got really clean images. We've got pretty looks. There was that whole thing when the 5Ds were around of it looking like film when it didn't. It looked like video at 24 frames a second, but it had shallow depth of field, and it was like, oh, that's the film look. Well, I think we've gotten to the point where film and video are
Pretty
comparable mediums.
Distinguishable, yeah.
Yeah, you can still tell the difference, but both of them should exist on their own, and both of them are valid. So we've got to the point where you don't look at it and go, oh, that's video. You may look at it and go, that's digital or that's film, but they can both create beautiful images and tell a story. So, long way. I think it's going to be bigger sensors, for everybody. No bigger than maybe full frame, but
I hope not.
Yeah, light sensitivity, cleanness of signal, streamlining metadata. There's lots of things we can do, but glass right now is the hot thing.
Yeah,
and glass we can always make more glass.
You think you're going to be getting into larger format zooms?
I think the industry going to have to. And if the industry has to, we have to. The Sumi Rays and our primes cover full frame. Our current zooms are set for Super 35, and I don't think that market is going anywhere. The demand for Super 35 will continue forever. I don't think it's not like a compression or a codec. It's not going to go away. Super 35 will be here. But as the sensors get larger, the requirements for lenses are going to be there. And this is the first time in years that...
Well, that's good for a lens manufacturer.
It's great. I mean, most people think of us as a camera company. We're a lens company. You know, the lenses are the blades and the cameras are the razors, you know, and that's where the money is. And that's where the design is. And the art is in the glass, really. You know, if everybody made the same sensor, the decisions you would make would be lens related now. Yep. So how do you get the image you want?
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there.
Yep. So we're getting there. No, glass is going to play big, and I would assume we move more into zooms and even unique glass, like our 50 to 1000. That's a pretty unique piece of glass. And I think in sensors, unique sensors will play in. Like we have one sensor which gets to 4.2 million ISO. So there's a lot of places you can do interesting things with technology, but in general, I think we all move to larger sensors, flexible sensors that can crop to Super 35 well, shoot in full frame well. Anamorphic is big again. I don't know where we are in anamorphic glass. We've never really played in anamorphic glass, but we are definitely making cameras that'll handle anamorphic. So a lot of things going on, actually.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Tim.
Oh, my pleasure. See you again.